Welcome to Civil Discourse, a podcast where participants are free to share their ideas, empathize with other perspectives, and who intend to advance to a better solution to fix a societal ill. We will focus on topics that are particularly complicated. In a time where information is from sources more opinionated than ever, our mission is to find solutions and goals to accelerate the nation's progress with cultural impunity. I'm your host, Todd Furniss. So we started our conversation today learning a little bit about your story, and then that kind of evolved into a discussion around how your story helped you understand and address things both personally and professionally. And then we've observed how professionally we still, throughout all of industry, have a long way to go to get to the right place. I'm wondering, how do we change the dynamic? How do we change the discussion from one where individual groups of people, any of the number you just went through, you rattled off, is changed from discussing that and quotas, if you will, to a different topic around how do we bound together? How do we come together and fight the commonly shared view that these things are bad and that we need to unify our work in addressing the elimination of the bad things that we're discussing, whether it's sexual harassment, whether it's exclusion for one reason or another, whether it's any of a number of other issues. How do we change the dialogue into one where we collectively are unified to fight against that problem? And things like quotas and headcounts and other metrics like that are going to be wildly unsatisfying as a tool to address the commonly shared view of elimination of these societal ills?
Boy, if I could answer that quickly, I could, I'd be a multi-millionaire. I think it's hard. And I think I had an interesting conversation with the former chair of an AmLaw 100 firm recently, and which is one of the largest firms in the American Lawyer 100, AmLaw 100, and we were talking about this, and he said they're so focused on money. The big firms, smaller firms too, are so focused on profitability and making the money that they make year after year, and doing what you just suggested, or even what I suggested, which is find ways to develop a culture of storytelling and promoting that kind of authenticity and acceptance is going to be time consuming. And
well, let me offer you a different thought. I'm going to do something, hopefully you'll consider a pleasant surprise. I'm going to suggest that your background, it uniquely qualifies you to help. And it's not because of the unfortunate experiences you've had to deal with, but it's because of your music background. If you think about it, an orchestra works best when it's all working together. It is comprised of players of a bunch of different instruments. They all look and sound different, and yet they all play a role in contributing to an outcome called a composition or a song. And if there's any abrasion, if there's any fault, if there's any miscue or failed performance in that orchestra, the orchestra kind of screeches a little bit. Oftentimes the conductor throws a fit, but generally the orchestra screeches a little bit. So isn't the analogy we're looking for that we want to have the firm operate like an orchestra, with everybody given the opportunity to find their chair, to play their flute or their instrument, as the case may be, and to execute as flawlessly as possible, given the sheet music before them?
That is really interesting. And I think it's a really good analogy. And what strikes me is that to be a fine member of the orchestra, you have to take enormous responsibility to be an extraordinary performer on your own. And so there's a tremendous amount of personal responsibility and accountability that you have every single day on your own to then bring to the orchestra. So at least, if there's screeching, by golly, it's not going to be my screeching. And what's interesting in that environment, even the rehearsal environment, which I've probably certainly over 1,000 hours of rehearsal time in my, sort of real rehearsal time in my career. It's okay. If Todd is the trombone player and has a solo and you're not getting it, he's going to call you out in front of the entire 100-piece orchestra. And he's going to say, Todd, you've got to, this, you're missing this, you're missing this. And there's loads of nuance typically to the kind of comments that are made and the expectations. And all of us know, we all expect Todd's going to get it. Because if Todd doesn't get it, we're all going to be a little bit mad at Todd. and that is the culture, and it's the expectation. And that's why we continue to have music programs and band directors and orchestra directors in schools, public schools and private schools and in colleges, and kids still go on and get these degrees just like I did, because it's so clear what the accountability standards are and expectations are. And I think the goal is absolutely a shared goal. So in a law firm, for example, could we take a big law firm and really truly have a shared goal, have the chair of the firm willing to be in sort of the orchestra environment, the way that Herbert von Karajan or something would lead the Berlin Philharmonic. Is there that kind of a person who would actually be willing to lead that way? And frankly, and do they have a culture where they could actually call out Todd and say, Todd, this is not working, or this is your behavior in this way is not conducive with what we want here. And if you don't ultimately get it right, we're going to have to find someone else. Yeah. I think that would be extraordinary.
Well, my view of this is it's all a system, and we need to look at this as a system and employ systems thinking to it all, around a whole range of things. But Deborah, I could talk to you for another 2 or 3 hours, and I'm sure you don't have the time for me to do that. So thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Again, I'm grateful for your courage and your bravery to talk about this. And I'm also grateful for the impact you're having, personally and professionally, on your friends, but also on the entirety of the industry. Thank you so much for being with me today.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks for watching this week's episode of Civil Discourse. To learn more about today's topic or our guest, visit www.the60percentsolution.com or www.tfip.group.